Hello, welcome to the Energy Career Circle. My name is Ayodeji Stephen, and I'm glad to have you all here today. Today we're going to be taking a very important topic, and that involves translating the knowledge that we have gained. For so many of us that want to get into the energy sector, want to get ahead in our career, or even for young graduates, people that just finished the undergraduate degrees, and they are looking to get a space in the energy sector. How do we begin to convert the knowledge that we have gained both from our undergraduate degrees, from short courses that we are taking online and we have taken, um, into actionable steps that will put us ahead in our career? And today's episode is going to help us on how that journey can be made and done seamlessly without too much hindrance as we progress in our career journey. So today we're going to be looking into understanding interaction, selecting our target roles. Selecting target roles might seem like an easy thing to do, but it's quite important and has to be done diligently and intentional, as we would see as we move ahead. Um, and on today's episode of the Energy Career Circle, I hope that you learn something that helps your career. Welcome. All right. So today we're going to be looking into the trap of knowing too much and why your understanding is not enough. Just understanding the sector, understanding how the sector moves, understanding the report, or even having read the report or taking courses. That's not enough. And oftentimes people take a lot of courses. I remember earlier in my career when I, wanted to grow my knowledge of the energy space. I remember in a space of 3 months, for almost every week or every 2 weeks, I was doing and finishing a course on Coursera. So you can imagine how many courses I finished in a space of about 3 months. And I think it's even extended into many spheres because I take several other courses outside of Coursera. And I had a lot of understanding. But at the point, I needed to focus and carve a niche for myself. Because without carving a niche, without focusing, we will not be able to achieve impact. It will be as though we are pouring our energy in so many spaces and then we'll be stretched to thin. Now, there are many professionals that feel like they are stuck, in the same position in the energy space. And the difference between them and those that are making impact and making progress is in three things that I'll be highlighting. Having knowledge is just one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is making intentional action. So, in making the difference, difference between where we are and where we want to get to, the first thing to know is that awareness is not direction, and you need direction. So that you have an understanding of what is happening in the sector, you understand the reports that are currently being released, you are following the news that the sector is constantly churning out, does not mean that you have a direction. And we all need direction. I was telling someone earlier today or yesterday, that when there is no clarity, progress is stunted. And without clarity, direction turns into confusion. So it seems as though one is not making progress, and it means as though one is not going as one should go, even though one is gaining knowledge. Right? So awareness is not direction. Second is that interest is not intent. So that you have an interest in the energy sector, that you have interest in growing yourself in the energy sector, does not necessarily mean that you are intentionally doing things. And intentionality is what moves the needle. Intentionality is what causes change. It's what separates the thinkers from the doers. That's very important. Intentionality is what separates the thinkers from the doers. Because in intentionality, yes, you have to be intentional even about the knowledge you gain, but you have to translate the knowledge into action. And it's all starts with being intentional and deciding, I'm going to make this work, I'm going to do this, but not just making anything random work. We have to make sure that it is guided and directed. And that's what we are going to be doing on today's episode. And also, learning is not positioning. That you have knowledge, have knowledge of maybe biomass, you have knowledge of solar, you have knowledge of hydrogen. That's not positioning. Because when you have all of those knowledge, the question is, so what role do I bring you into? And in what aspect of the sector can you really thrive? So it means that you have so many knowledge, but it becomes difficult for stakeholders to, bring you into a particular project because they feel like you're a generalist. One of the things that you cannot afford to do in the energy sector is just be a generalist. You have to be a specialist. Now, you have to be a specialist that might have general knowledge about other things, but at least you need to own a domain. So, what I want you to take, at least if you do not take anything, is that information doesn't change careers. No, it doesn't. It is decisions that do. And we need to make the right decision for ourselves, for career, the way we engage with others living in our career, for us to be able to make the right progress at the right time in the right sequence that we want it to go. So, once again, information does not change careers. It is decisions that do it. So, having gained the right information, what do we then do next? How do we close the gap, between where we are and then where we want to be? What is the next move? How do we make these next moves? Right? Now, too many people stall in their careers. Now, several reasons cause this. Now, for so many, it's because they do not have clarity on the roles they want to get into. And you see a lot, in fact, I've seen a lot of young persons stuck at the early stages of their career. One of the things that I really want every person that listens to, our channel to do is to have a global career. And to have not just a global career, but to have it in a speedy manner to be placed in the right rooms early in their careers. Right? And one way to do this is to have clarity on the roles they want, because there are too many options and you cannot afford to be confused. And oftentimes, so many people also stall in their career because they have the fear of choosing the wrong path. Now, how do we avoid this fear? How do we make sure that we are not one of those caught in the conundrum of what do I do and what do I not do? A way to go about this is to understand the workflow of how to pick our target roles. Remember when I said earlier that today we are going to be looking into picking our target roles. The first thing is to understand the sector, which I believe that you're already doing, or at least you have the interest to do. Remember interest and intent when I mentioned earlier. So the first thing is to understand the sector and also to understand these roles. So as you're understanding the sector, you are seeing the many roles that are coming into the sector. Then you begin to map your target roles. So you begin to have some idea of roles that you want to get into. And there is a way to even have an idea of these roles, which we're going to talk about. So after having the idea of these roles, the next thing will be then to do a skill map. Note, you must have your target roles before you do a skill mapping. So the reason for this is so that you are not just acquiring skills, that are too scattered. Take for example, you get recently maybe in data analysis, and then you go get skills in maybe say PV solar installation, and then you go get skills in say maybe hydrogen facility maintenance. Those are skills that are too scattered. The sectors in which they can work are too scattered from each other. Now, while some of them can be bridged together to, improve your productivity in a particular sector, you need to streamline the skills because skills should be gained in a progressive manner. What do I mean by that? At this stage of my career, what skills do I need to excel? Once you have mastered those skills, you have developed a level of competency in those skills, you then begin to think, what's the next step? And then you repeat this process all over again. So the first thing is an understanding. Then you identify your target roles, and then you do a skill mapping. And after that, you build an action plan. So after you have mapped out the skills, you build an action plan. So it is important that we do not collect skills randomly. We cannot afford it. You have to let your target role select the skills that you begin to build. You can't begin to cherry pick skills here and there. It has to be defined. So when you're picking the skills have to be able to help you to get into a particular role, or at least a set of roles, so that we are not just picking skills that become irrelevant at the end of the day. I understand that no knowledge is lost. However, in the level that we are now, in the state that we are now, what are the most important skills that we need? And therefore, we can concentrate our effort our energy, our learning, and even our financial resources to being the best when it comes to those skills. That way, we can become the best, we can even go global in our career. So, in mapping out your top three target roles, what are the things that you need to do? First, you need to ask yourself, this target role that I want, how defined it is. Remember, I've said that you have to define the target roles. You cannot afford for them to be too far from themselves. That's the way I'm putting it, right? Take for example, you want to be a hydrogen project manager. You cannot just the way you would define your role. You cannot say you just want to be an energy industry leader. That's not a defined role. It has to be defined. I want to be a hydrogen project manager. I want to be a policy analyst. I want to be a communications officer or a communications manager or a communications expert in the energy sector. In fact, you can break it down. I want to be a communications expert when it comes to electric mobility. It has to be niched. It has to be defined. The next thing is that you need to focus. Now, focus always beats flexibility. I know that you might have the idea of, oh, I just want to gain skills so that if any other role comes in, no, no. People building for the long term don't build that way. People building to have a global influence, to have a global career, do not build that way. While you might have many capacity, you might have many talents, you might have many skills, there is a way to build your skills and build it in a structured format. And that will be defined by the roles that you want to get into. And yes, there are three selection filters. First one is interest. Now, the question to ask yourself is, what am I interested in? What problems do I enjoy solving? I remember that when I started my career, I had a company um, that was called Energy Gist. Why did I start Energy Gist? First off, I had an interest and I saw a gap in the sector. There were so many bogus reports that were being released in the sector, energy sector, that the ordinary man did not understand. And I decided, oh, I can solve this. So what did I do? I decided that we are going to take reports and break them into formats that the ordinary man can understand. Today, that same thing has now metastasized into what I now do in terms of releasing carousels about different topics on the energy sector. But when I did that, what did I do? I identified that I wanted to communicate to people clearly. Guess what? In my next role, which was a policy analyst role with an organization in Nigeria, I also did the same thing. What was I doing as a policy analyst? I was analyzing policies, how they interact with the energy sector in a way that the common man could understand. So you see how that my interest played a role in shaping the skills that I developed and how those skills then contributed into the target roles that I had. The next thing after interest is market demand. You need to ask yourself, where is the funding going? Right? Where are the projects that are being commissioned? What are the kinds of projects that are being commissioned? What roles do they need on this project? That can help you to identify the roles that you would want to focus on coming into the energy sector. And also you can ask yourself, what part of your experience can you use as a bridge? I've mentioned also how that I use my experience with energy gist into my policy analysis role. So for some of you, it may be that you volunteered with an organization. And we're going to talk more on volunteering, which is quite important in our career journey. Right? So it's important that we think about how our past, how our current can also serve, as a template for the roles that we are targeting. How can I leverage everything that I have? To get into this role and to become better and better and better and even become the best. We also need to ask ourselves when we are thinking of, where do I fit? Take for example, I'm going to list a couple of ones. So take for example, in policy and research, it could be a policy analyst, it could be a regulatory specialist. I'm just going to list these, to give an idea. It could be you being a research fellow under policy and research, all of those. So it means that What are you going to target? You're going to try to build your research skills. You're going to try to build your policy knowledge. Policy analyst, regulatory specialist, research fellow. For project and infrastructure related roles, you could want to be a project manager, you could want to be a field engineer, or maybe even an operations officer. Another one is to maybe in the industrial and commercial sector, maybe say you want to be a mobility manager, a business development person, and or maybe an energy trader. But one thing you need to know is that if you cannot clearly name your target role, the market would not know where to place you. And once the market does not know where to place you, it means that you are wrongly positioned and you are not visible to the people that need to see you. And therefore, others will be selected ahead of you. And it's a very competitive industry with very competitive market. Therefore, you want to do your best to make sure that you are well positioned. Once again, if you cannot clearly name your target role, the market would not be able to articulate where it should place you. Over-certify yourself. It's not just about the certificate. The knowledge you're gaining has to translate into action. So act on the knowledge you have now. Also, you don't need to draft actionable steps. Take for example, you are looking into say maybe the policy analysis sector. You are one that wants to be a policy analyst. Actionable step that you can take. You can say in the next 30 days, I'm going to draft a policy brief. So that means you have work to do. And in this age of AI, you can work with AI to draft an outline, and it will guide you through every chapter of the outline that you need to work on. But you need to act on the knowledge now. So you need to draft actionable steps. You have gained knowledge. You have defined your target roles. You need to draft steps. What am I going to do now? Let's say you don't have a job. Or let's even say you are working in a job, but you want to get better. You need to tell yourself, push yourself to do better. Draft actionable steps. Another actionable step, say maybe you want your project to have more exposure. You can volunteer or intern on a pilot project. Yes, volunteer. I mentioned earlier that volunteering is quite important. It's quite important because when you're volunteering on a project, what you're doing is that you are giving yourself the ability to apply the knowledge that you have and also develop more competencies on that project without failing too much, because there will be people that will guide you such that you are not failing too much. So act on the knowledge you have now. Another thing is maybe you want industry visibility, right? The action to do is publish LinkedIn Insights weekly. So you have drafted, you have learned, right? You have taken courses. From those courses, what did you learn? Share with the world. In my experience, one of the best ways to learn properly is to try to pass on the knowledge that you are gaining. Now, don't do this from a malicious place of, maybe or showmanship, from a place of showmanship. Do it genuinely. This is what I'm learning. I want to share it with you this week. What do you think? These are the things that I have done, and these are the things that helped my career. I mean, it's all on LinkedIn. Anyone can check my profile on LinkedIn. Ayodeji Stephen. That's my name. The things that I have written as far back as 4-5 years ago when I got certificate on Coursera, the things I learned from those courses, I put them on LinkedIn. So you too, you can do that. We can all do that. Now, if your work is invisible, your readiness is invisible. I have insinuated this earlier. Because evidence always beats a certificate every single time. You need to show people that you are not just accumulating certificate, but you are also learning. And knowledge is powerful. Knowledge is powerful. All right. I want to share with you a strategy that I think can also work for you. It's called the 30-60-90 day rule. So when you have gained knowledge, you have identified your target roles, in drafting your actionable steps now, you can also go on the 30-60-90 day rule. So in the first 30 days, what do you do? In the first 30 days, you identify the landscape and start consuming specific knowledge. Right? So the first 30 days is for you to learn. You do courses, you read articles, you read blogs, you read papers. In the next 60 days, you now need to start creating an output. So one of the things you can do is you can create something. You can write a report, you can write a post or a project that you are contributing to. And the way you will have a project to contribute to, usually when you're starting out in your career or you are just coming into the energy sector, is most likely when you are contributing or you are volunteering on a project. Talk about your role on that project. Talk about the difficulties that you faced. Talk about how you solved it. If you had a colleague help you, talk about that also. And then in the last 30 days, which will then cumulate into 90 days, you will then update your CV or your LinkedIn to mirror the target role that you want to get into. What I'm telling you is that in 90 days, you can change the course of your life, you can change the course of your career. And it all starts by learning and doing. Learning and doing. Learning and doing. And also for your LinkedIn, I think this is quite important. Please have a good headshot. You don't need to have a professional photographer take you. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't if you have the financial means to do that. If you have the financial means, please by all means do that. But if you don't, you have a friend that has a good phone camera, Android or maybe iPhone. Find a good background. Take a good headshot. It could even be a conference that you attend. Take a good headshot and put it. Find a way to maybe edit it a bit and put it on your LinkedIn, because a good headshot speaks boldness. It speaks audaciousness. It makes people know that you are serious with your career. Okay. So in conclusion, as I mentioned, there are three things to master. You have to choose your three target roles. You have to map the required skills for these roles, and then you have to define concrete actions. Now, I want to leave you with this. There are, three things that are quite important in developing a career. And first is clarity. You see, clarity is one of the most underrated career advantage. Once you have it, everything moves faster. See, without clarity, there is no growth. You need to have clarity. Choose your three target roles, map the skills that you need for these three target roles, and also define concrete actions. The second thing I want to tell you is collaborate. Collaborate with people. It's very important. And then the third thing is that please volunteer your time. Volunteer your time to other people's sons. I'm a Christian and I'm going to leave you with this. The Bible says something. It says that if a man is not diligent in the business of others, he will give him his own. But first off, the man needs to work in the business of others. So volunteer your time, volunteer your resources, and in this way, you are not just volunteering your time and your resources, cheaply away. You are volunteering it strategically, and you are developing your skills and your resources. I hope that this episode has been able to help you in the way you think about your career and how you move forward with your career. I look forward to the next episode with you. And on the Energy Career Circle, we're going to be sharing more and more of things like this. We're going to be bringing on guest speakers. Thank you for joining and see you next time. Bye.